Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Your Voice, Your Future. I'm your moderator, Armstrong Williams. Ben Crump is joining us for the first half hour of the show, and coming up later, Tony Lyons, publisher of Skyhorse, will also join the conversation to talk about the challenges of writing and publishing books in today's climate. But first, there's my man, Ben Crump. My man, Ben Crump. Oh boy, he always has these provocative stories. And now he is going to add another title to his name, executive producer. But executive producer of what? Ben Crump, just think about 34 and a half minutes. Think about what you could do in 34 and a half minutes. Well, Ben Crump does something that's pretty remarkable in 34 and a half minutes. And I know you're going to say what, Armstrong? What? Ben Crump shows you in a very emotional roller coaster journey on how to sue the Ku Klux Klan in 34 and a half minutes. I did not make it up, it's true. Ben Crump is on tonight. Now, you know I gotta challenge him. It would not be me. He's here to talk about how to sue the Klan. And this is a very deep story about 5 courageous women. They were known as the Tennessee Five that were viciously attacked by the Ku Klux Klan. We've been in the late 1880s, but here we are. It is 2024, and I gotta figure out why in 2024 is my man Ben Crump trying to tell us how to sue the Klan in 34 and a half minutes, and how relevant is it to where we are today. But hey, don't let me take away his thunder, his sunshine. Let me welcome my man, because he's my man, Ben Crump, to the broadcast. Hello, sir.
How you doing, Armstrong? It's an honor to be with you this evening.
Well, you know, I've looked forward to your telling us how to sue anybody in 34 and a half minutes, but also the relevance of it in 2024, given all the things that Americans and all the directions that we're pulled in.
Yeah, Armstrong, this short film documentary is about 5 courageous Black women known as the Chattanooga Five, who in 1980 was savagely shot by the Ku Klux Klan, who went into the Black community looking to find Black people to shoot. And they came across these 5 senior citizens, these women, and they shot them just evil. You know, these are grandmothers. But miraculously, all 5 of them survived the shooting. Now, the Ku Klux Klan members were arrested, the 3 of them, and they were charged. However, all of them escaped criminal conviction, save a misdemeanor who only served 4.5 months. And these women and the community were outraged, but they wouldn't let that be the end of the story.
So what year is this, though?
This is in 1980 when this happened. And in 1982 is when they filed the civil lawsuit after the men escaped any kind of criminal culpability. And they did something, Armstrong, that, you know, is pretty remarkable. In the midst of the Deep South, these 5 Black women had the courage to sue the Ku Klux Klan, who was already threatening them and had shot them to show that the threats were real. But they did it, and them and the lawyers used a little-known law called the Ku Klux Klan Act of 1871, a law that had been enacted after the Civil War to try to help protect Blacks from Klan violence over 100 years ago. And they used that law and provided us with a roadmap today. They provided us with a precedent, Armstrong. They blazed a trail so we all could know how to stand up against hate in 2024. That's what is so remarkable about this enduring story of heartbreak and tragedy that becomes one of hope by the end of the film. And you see these Black women who were just ordinary, salt of the earth women who stood against hate to say we are better than this America.
You know, so obviously Crump has discussed with us what inspired him to produce How to Sue the Klan and why he thinks it's important to tell the story of the Chattanooga Five now. Can you discuss the process of using the 1871 Ku Klux Klan action, the Chattanooga case, and the documentary also emphasizes the ongoing relevance, which was what we want to get to, of civil law in combating what you consider to be racially motivated crimes. How do you see the role of such laws evolving in a fight against what you see today? You still think there's systemic racism and organized hate groups in this country?
Oh, certainly they are. And the KKK Act of 1871 was a law that would allow private citizens under federal protections and federal authority to be able to sue in federal court. And it was so important because after the Civil War, certain powers in the government still would not see Black people as equal. And many of the law enforcement would not protect them against the Klan. Many of law enforcement members were the members of the Klan. And so it was the federal government who had to intervene. And you would think, Armstrong, they needed it back in 1871, but it was shown in 1980 that these women needed it after the Klan got away scot-free practically to be able to hold them accountable. They were awarded by a predominantly white jury. They were awarded $535,000 in 1982, which was a great amount. The Klan was bankrupt. They couldn't afford to pay it. And more importantly, the judge issued an injunction on behalf of all the Black people in the county against the Klan, because the Klan talked about future violence. And so it instructed the sheriff and the federal marshals to be on guard against future Klan violence in Chattanooga, Tennessee. That's what these women did. And it set a precedent that was used for decades afterwards. In fact, Armstrong, we still use it today.
Why is this so relevant today?
Well, when you think about in your home state, Dylan Roof went and shot, 9 of the most innocent people you could find in the church, Mount Moriah. This young white supremacist even said in the interview he felt so bad about shooting them because these Black church goers were so nice to him. They were so kind to him. Well, it was the KKK Act that allowed those families to get civil justice based on the precedent that was set by the Chattanooga Five. And then we look at up in Buffalo, New York, in the Tops supermarket, when those 10 Black senior citizens were killed there by a young white supremacist. We are using the KKK Act to bring civil charges and hopefully get civil accountability in that case. And also, Armstrong, in Charlottesville, Virginia, when a young white woman was killed by a white supremacy group who marched screaming out, "The Jews will not replace us." Well, it was the KKK Act also used in that case to be able to allow her family to recover against that hate group. And so we would like to believe that we won't need it anymore, but tragically, we have been reminded over and over again, Armstrong Williams, that we need the law today now, and it's more relevant now than ever.
Well, how do we use that same Ku Klux Klan law for those families in Chicago that are killed at an extraordinary rates? I mean, almost on a daily basis, where so many blacks who die at the hands of someone who doesn't have to look like the Klan member, but they die and they lose their lives as well, no matter what you may call it. How do you also gain justice for the many families throughout America, especially in the inner cities, that lose their lives to black-on-black crime every day?
Well, I would say this is twofold. Number one, the KKK Act is an act where there is an intentional violent act done because of a person's race. And we don't have to guess about it in all these cases with Dylan Roof or the young white supremacists in Charlottesville or in Buffalo, because they had manifestos that told us their intentions. As it relates to Chicago or any other city, we have to tackle crime the way we tackle all crimes. We have to be direct and unflinching. And it doesn't matter if the finger of the trigger is a black hand or a white hand. When a person commits a crime, they should be held accountable. We should throw the book at them. It should not be no slapping of the hand if you commit a violent act against another citizen. I stand as firmly against that as I stand against the people who killed George Floyd or who killed Ahmaud Arbery. Crime is crime, violence is violence, and we have to always hold people accountable for resorting to violence.
You know, I actually, and I've never said this before, I actually think that if you look at the statistics, these young black kids are not killing whites, they're killing blacks in overwhelming numbers because they're black. Because I actually think on some level, they think the penalty for that will be less if they kill somebody else. So if you put it in that perspective, they do these killings and they target it in certain communities because of people that look like them, because they feel as though there's less value of their life, no different what you accuse the Klan of. So how is it any different when you bring race into it? Because it seems to be that whether it's the Klan that you talked about in the 80s or whether it's blacks in these inner cities, they kill because they're black, because they're not killing anybody else.
Armstrong Williams, I agree with you. You're absolutely right. In fact, I write about it in my book, Open Season, when I talk about the criminal justice system tells you that if you kill a black person, you're not likely to make it to death row. But if you kill a white person and you happen to be a black person, there's a much greater chance that you're going to get on death row. So we agree, and we have to see every life is valuable. Every life is equal. And so we have to hold everybody accountable. Just like I said, in Buffalo, New York, we got to hold that young white supremacist accountable, and we got to hold everybody who helped him load that gun, whether it's the gun manufacturers, gun distributors, everybody in that chain. I feel the same way about the violence happening in Chicago and other inner cities. We need to hold everybody accountable who makes it accessible for people to go commit such heinous acts of violence with such relatively ease, to kill 30 people in less than 30 seconds. It is just unconscionable to think how many mass shootings we continue to have in America, and we have to do something to prevent this. We're better than this, America.
Ben Crump is our guest. We'll be back on the other side of the break. This is Your Voice, Your Future. We'll be back. Yeah, my man, just stick with me because I'm... I hear somebody talking on the phone, but it's okay. It's all right. Hey, welcome back to the broadcast with our very distinguished guest, civil rights icon, Ben Crump. Mr. Crump, at this very moment, the Maryland legislature is debating a juvenile justice crime bill to pass stiffer laws for these juveniles committing these heinous crimes while they feel they're those that can be rehabilitated. What you find out is that 90% of the crimes are committed by 10% of the youth. What do you think about locking those up who have no intentions of changing their behavior, that just wreak havoc on their communities, having them living in constant fear and taking lives and pillaging and stealing and raping and car theft and carjacking without any afterthought?
Armstrong, you and I and Ben Carson, we authored a book together talking about the education system in Baltimore and the fact that many of these young people are not getting quality education. In fact, many of them graduated from high school, but yet cannot read on a third grade level. And as you and I discussed, when you don't have a quality education in this society today that is driven by the information age and technology, then you're already in a jail cell. They just haven't slammed the door yet physically on you. And until we can deal with this education issue, you're going to see these atrocities, these terrible things. However, I do believe that we must always try to give children a chance in this world. And that means their minds are still forming. Scientists tell us this up until the early 20s. And so I get it. People want to hold people accountable, but you don't want it to be so much, in fact, that you're locking up all the children because you can only see the worst in them. You can't see the redeeming qualities of them, that they still can be contributing citizens, constructive to this society. I'm not ready to give up on them yet. I do understand that we have to deal with crime, and nobody excuses crime, but we also have to have the resources to give them better alternatives that they feel they must resort to crime.
You know, How to Sue the Klan interweaves narratives from different generations. How did you and director John Beater decide on this storytelling approach, and what impact do you hope it has on audience? And it's just amazing that you finally have your first executive producing role, Mr. Crump.
Well, we evolve in Armstrong. I'm trying to be like you, big brother. But, a lot of it is, from you, Armstrong, your voice, giving people a voice. And that's what I felt so special about this project. We gave these Black women a voice. Their story had never been told. It was almost as if it was swept under the rug. And we were able to tell their story and give them the flowers they so richly deserve for this extraordinary thing they did. And so in the documentary, you have many narratives. You have their children and their grandchildren who were there when their grandparents were shot, telling the story. You have the mayor, the newspaper editor, the TV reporter, recounting some of those things that they had only got out the archives from Chattanooga, Tennessee. And then finally at the end, Armstrong, I thought it was just so endearing when they painted the mirror of the 5 Black women on the wall. All of them had died except one of them. And they brought Miss Opal Lee Jackson to the wall. And she said, "Oh, I didn't know they were going to put us up beside the wall. Isn't that very nice of them?" That tells you just the salt of the earth quality of these women. They weren't seeking any limelight or anything. They were just trying to say this was wrong and we should try to right this wrong, because we want to be an example for the community that we have to stand against hate. And you and I often, Armstrong, talk about that, standing against hate, trying to say America can be America for everybody. And that's what we continue to fight for every day. Sometimes we do it in different ways, but we come out at the same objective. America should be America for every American.
You know, throughout your career, Mr. Trump, you've been a vocal advocate of victims of violence, particularly racial violence. How does this documentary complement your broader mission, and what conversations do you hope that it sparks in the long run?
Yeah, I continue to try to use the Seventh Amendment as my sword as we fight against the American landscape of jurisprudence. And the Seventh Amendment says when there is a wrong, that private citizens can have access to the courts to hold people accountable. And I do fundamentally believe we have to try to make it financially unsustainable to have racism and violence of anybody be acceptable. And with every case, we continue to try to raise the value of life, Black life, white life, brown life, red life. We have to say life is special. Each and every life is special, and we should try to exalt it. We should try to show the best of humanity versus the spite of humanity. We should always try to say that because you are a child of God, I see the humanity in you. And that's what I try to do in and out the courtroom, Armstrong, when we make these arguments, whether it's for George Floyd or Ahmaud Arbery or Breonna Taylor. You're just trying to say, what could have come of Trayvon Martin? What could have come of Breonna Taylor? Breonna was only 2 semesters away from being a full-time registered nurse, but yet we will never know how she could have enriched society. And that's my reoccurring nightmare, Armstrong. If we can just prevent the next one from happening, maybe that person, whether the children in Chicago who suffer from the violence there, or Tyree Nichols in Memphis, Tennessee, or Breonna Taylor, all of them. That is my life's calling. That is my life's mission, to fight for the civil rights of us all.
The film highlights, Mr. Crump, a historic injunction against all Klan activities in Chattanooga. Can you speak to the significance of this legal victory and its impact on the community and beyond?
Yeah, Armstrong, that was such a revelation. You file it as lawyers and you hope that the judge and the jury will hear your plea, but for them to say, we have to empower the law enforcement in this community to know that we have an active injunction against Ku Klux Klan members, that if they say they accidentally shot somebody, that's not going to be enough, because you have told us your intents. And we know what your manifesto is, what your mission is to have racial violence inflicted on Black people in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And so this precedent was set. And once you have a precedent, then it makes it easier for other courts, whether in Mississippi and in Virginia and in Massachusetts. Other courts then can say, no, we have a precedent to turn to stem this Klan violence. It really was a guiding light for all of us that these 5 women, the Chattanooga 5, gave us. And we should always remember them fondly, to say that just because justice is delayed, it doesn't mean it will be denied. They never gave up, Armstrong. They never gave up. And that is the lesson. We continue to fight for justice so that the American promise can be real for everybody.
Mr. Crump, it's fascinating. I do know when you must travel around, and there's so many projects that you have an opportunity to give life to, whether it's on broadcasts, it's through speeches or whatever. But what continues to give you hope about this melting pot we find ourselves in?
You know, obviously, when people see this documentary, that gives you a lot of hope. I mean, what were the odds against these Black women ever seeing any semblance of justice? I mean, the fact that you can have people who come from different walks of life, different life experiences, different communities still see the wrong that was inflicted upon these women and say, as the beloved community, we're going to do justice. That gives me hope. The fact that, you know, with George Floyd, you had as many young white people as there was young Black people saying, until we get justice for George Floyd, none of us can breathe, because we all watched that video in horror as he wouldn't take his knee off his neck. And what gives me hope, Armstrong, is people like you being able to educate me on things that I don't always appreciate or agree with, but yet we listen and we can agree, but not be disagreeable. We have to get America back on its compass to say that we can have civil disagreements and be civil to one another. And until we get that, then I worry about the world we're giving our children. But the hope is in documentaries like this, with cases like this, where it was a predominant, they had only had one African American on the jury. And all of them saw that this was a wrong that needed to be righted for these Black women. And if that doesn't inspire you, I don't know what will.
Well, look, we appreciate you, because certainly if we did not have our trusted friendship, we certainly would not be having conversations like this. So you open up our audience to a world that they need to be reminded of. And what you've shown through the jury's judgment decisions is that good people exist. Doesn't matter what their race may be. You can clearly see injustice as well as justice in a courtroom. So thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Crump. We wish you well with 34 and a half minutes of How to Sue the Klan, and I encourage people to go out and watch the documentary. When we come back, we're going to turn to the publishing world with Tony Lyons, the founder of Skyhorse Publishing. I'm Armstrong Williams. This is Your Voice, Your Future.
Love you, brother.
It is easier to build up strong children than to try and repair broken men.
The streets are plagued with crime, violence. There's a lot of poverty, and it's all a result of lack of education that's happening in our schools. So it really is a crisis.
We come from very different political perspectives, but we've come to the same conclusion, and that is there is a crisis in the classroom. Children are being deprived of quality of life because they're being deprived of a good education. We must solve this problem. It's incumbent upon all of us to join hands together to get this done.
We can't afford to wait one more day before we address these issues, because every day we lose another child.
Let's stop the politicking. Let's stop the games. Let's really do something to give these kids a real chance at life and being a part of that American dream.
We need accountability for funding. Many of the districts where you're seeing very low test scores, students graduating with very low literacy and math comprehension rates, they are receiving a lot of funding. So where is the money going where our kids aren't being adequately educated?
If you believe every child is deserving of a quality education, please go to educationjusticefoundation.com. And welcome back to Your Voice, Your Future. I'm Armstrong Williams. Tony Lyons is probably a publisher that you probably have never heard about, but he's one of the most powerful publishers in America. Some of the most celebrated authors are published under his brand. and as the founding owner of Skyhorse Publishing, Mr. Lyons, how do you, and welcome to the broadcast. Thank you so much for joining us. How do you see the role of independent publishers evolving in the increasingly digital landscape of book publishing?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really tough time to be a publisher, but it's also a tough time in a lot of different ways in this country. So the important thing for a publisher is to publish books that are disturbing and thought-provoking and kind of dangerous, and so most publishers now are looking to publish books that aren't dangerous in any way for them. They're afraid of the people who work for them. They're afraid of the media sort of coming down on them. They're afraid of their shareholders. But an independent publisher can't be shut up or silenced. And, that's the role. That's the important role of a publisher, to be a counterbalance to an incredibly powerful government and all these incredibly powerful corporations that want to tell us what to think, what to do, what to put into our bodies, what to read, who to vote for, everything. And so we need books out there that, go against that, that stand for freedom, that every idea has to win in the marketplace of ideas.
I must tell you, with pride, for full disclosure, Skyhorse Publishing, under the leadership of Mr. Lyons, published Crisis in the Classroom with Mr. Crump and Dr. Carson. He's also published many of my previous books on their brand, and so I'm just so honored to welcome my friend, who I have much respect for, Mr. Lyons, to the broadcast. I can't believe it's taken us this long. Mr. Lyons, with the rise of audiobooks and ebooks, what strategies is Skyhorse Publishing implementing to adapt to the changing preferences of readers today?
I think that, that a lot of people still like printed books, and I personally just love printed books. And I love the idea that, that you can't shut them down in the same way that you can shut down an ebook, for example. Like that can just be taken down. And even if you bought it, it's possible to reach into your Kindle, for example, and change words. So a printed book is permanent. And it's there, and it stands up to all the censorship and the propaganda. You can get that book, put it on your shelf, and it's there forever.
The publishing industry has seen a significant shift towards self-publishing and direct-to-consumer sales. How is Skyhorse Publishing responding to these trends, and what impact do you believe they have on traditional publishing models?
Well, I think, there's a ton of self-publishing now. So there are literally millions of books published each year. And so readers need to have somebody to curate that. Readers need to have somebody tell them that a book has been well edited, that somebody's thought it through, that there's a professional writer. So those are some of the roles of a book publisher. But also, publishers have to have some kind of a strategy of how to sell a book. So they need to be able to make partnerships, and they need to be able to pay for certain kinds of advertising and know how to do it.
In the context of growing concerns about censorship and the free exchange of ideas, what role do you believe publishers should play in ensuring a diverse range of voices and perspectives are available to the reading public?
I think that publishers ought to, present to the public all different ideas and all different points of view. But most publishers just don't do that now. I mean, I've been really making a point to publish on both sides of all kinds of things. During the pandemic, we were doing books on, whether to vaccinate. So we do some books that were, the strongest possible argument for why the COVID vaccine was good, and then the strongest possible argument for why it's dangerous, why you shouldn't take it. Books on why masks work or books on why masks don't work. So I think that that's part of the role of a publisher, to put the information out there so that people can really decide for themselves what they believe, not just turn on the television and be, indoctrinated by, government mandates or government dictates.
Well, obviously, you and I both are vociferous readers. What is it that the public miss when they don't have the discipline and find the time to read a book, to read the classics, the kinds of books that you and others publish? We're into this mindset now that we can go online and read a story online or read a newspaper, and it whets and feeds our appetite for having a deeper knowledge of things. Remind people what it is that books can do that no other thing that you read can possibly come close to doing.
Well, books can really open your mind and your heart to all kinds of other ways of viewing the world. So, it's not enough to just be physically alive. You have to be open to ideas, to arguments. You've got to be willing to think about things that are complicated for you, or that are frustrating, or things that are outside of your comfort zone. And if you're not doing that, then I think you're not really living. And we're not on this planet for a long time. We're here for a short time. And in this short time, we should really use it, and we should think things through, and we should make decisions based on learning, and based on metaphor, and based on having read so many different things and spoken to so many different people, that we have real perspective. So if you're not reading books, there's no way you can have real perspective.
How does Skyhorse Publishing plan to leverage these emerging technologies such as AI, which can be dangerous, and machine learning in the editorial process and marketing of your books?
Yeah, I don't think that, publishers should fear any of the new technologies. They should just learn how to maximize their usefulness. So, when ebooks first came out, I don't know, about 10 years ago, many of the bigger publishers were scared that it was just going to get rid of all printed books. And they were looking at the pricing on ebooks and seeing their, $1.99 or 99 cents. They were thinking, how are we ever going to make money? But what they actually learned was that it was a whole new market, and that many people who bought ebooks wouldn't have bought a physical book because they were traveling, they didn't want to carry a book, or they would buy an ebook, but then also buy the book if they liked it. So the market just kept getting bigger. And that's something that I think a lot of people miss, that the new technologies can work well together, and that there are people out there who buy the ebook, the audiobook, the printed book, because they like to live with books, but they have complicated lives, so they like the convenience of these other formats. So I think that that's a part of what AI is gonna give you. It's gonna give you new formats, new ways of reading, new ways of finding things. But it's also got pitfalls, and that's that people can turn out books in 5 minutes. So the publisher's role is going to get even stronger. That somebody's got to curate all of those books. Somebody's got to show you what's real and what isn't.
Mr. Lyons, sustainability is really becoming an increasingly important issue for businesses all across the industries. And what steps is Skyhorse Publishing taking to address environmental concerns in the production and distribution of books?
So, with the environmental side of it, or the discoverability?
Both.
Okay, so with discoverability, we have 12,000 authors now. So what we're starting to do is to have authors that are in the same kind of area work together, so that somebody who's got 5,000 Twitter followers can tweet about somebody else's book in exchange for them doing it. So we think of all of these authors as a kind of a team that can work together in all of the different genres that we publish in. So I think that will give us real power, and that the bigger companies are so complicated and their contracts are so narrow that they don't have the ability to sort of deal directly with authors and to create brands and to create sort of teams and silos in all different areas, so that the authors can all help each other.
Tony Lyons is our guest. He's the president and CEO of Skyhorse Publishing, which not only publishes my books, but many books across all the social, business, political, and economic spectrum. He joins us for one of his rare interviews, and we're going to come back and talk about how Tony got started, his life, the impact of his father, and also for those of you that are watching the broadcast tonight, because everybody's got a book in them and everybody privately wants to write a book. Tony's going to share his wisdom and the guideline and the guidepost to just how you may become an author, not just an author, but a best-selling author. That and much more on Your Voice, Your Future when we return.
As a home buyer, you need a lender who cares about your home ownership dreams. United Security Financial has been helping families secure their dream homes for 30 years. We're a national fair practice lender that provides affordable mortgages and low down payment programs to eligible home buyers. To learn how United Security Financial can help you secure your dream home, call 1-800-373-4186.
You know, amazingly, Mr. Lyons, you were founded in 2006 and is an independent, solely owned company by you. How did you get started? Talk about your world-renowned father, and what does it take not only to publish books, but did you say you have 12,000 authors?
Well, we have 12,000 books, so we have some like you who have written, many books for us. But, 12,000 different books in print now. Yeah, it's an incredible number. And one of the things that I really love about it is the variety of characters, that I can call up, that I can talk to. 12,000 authors represents just such a wealth of knowledge. And it's just fascinating to me that there's still so many people working so hard to write books. And it's an incredible, job to actually write a full book. As it takes months and months all day long. People all think they can write a book, but it's a real job and it's tough.
And lonely.
Right.
So how did you get started?
Yeah, so I was always kind of a big reader. When I was pretty young, my father made a list. So my father was a professor of literature, but he also worked in publishing part-time. And he wrote 25 books. And then he, wrote articles for the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal. He wrote all about outdoor subjects. So he wrote in Fly Fisherman Magazine, Outdoor Life, Field and Stream. So, when I was pretty young, my father made this list of 100 of the best books that he'd ever read. And he gave it to me on my birthday and bought copies of all of them for me. Many of them were books that he had, but he gave them all to me in two big boxes and asked me to read them all and said, this is the foundation of sort of like what you need for life. So that was such a beautiful experience for me. Many of them had his little notes in the margins. And, I spent one summer reading most of those books. But to grow up with a father who's a professor and works in publishing and is a writer, is a great entree into the publishing field and all of the incredible ideas that are part of these books.
How old were you at the time?
So I believe that when he gave me the list of 100 books, I was 18.
And how many of those books, did you read all 100 books?
Oh, I read all the books on that list, yeah.
So you must share with us some of the books that not only greatly influenced your father, but continue to influence you today. What were some of the books?
Yeah, I mean, some of them are, old classics. I love The Old Man and the Sea. That's one of his favorite books. That's just an incredible book of, how anything's possible, that one old man fighting against the world, still has so much power left. And just the wisdom in that short book. So there are a lot of people who want to cancel all of the old books. But I think that there's just incredible wisdom in so many of these books that, might have something that doesn't fit in with, the way people think now, but just so many universal truths. And that's one of them. Just a spectacular book. Just every word in that book is, there's a line in it, trying to think, it's something like this. It's better to be lucky, but I choose to be exact. Then when luck comes, you're ready. And what I really love about that is that people are always thinking that they're going to get a break or they're going to get lucky. But what they don't realize is that most of the process is in creating a self that recognizes things, that is perceptive to opportunities. So it's not about waiting for things to happen in the outside world, that anything can happen if you're creative and if you're open and you're perceptive. And those are some of the truths from a book like that.
I am just surprised that you just did not share with the audience who want to know more about this book that it's an Ernest Hemingway classic.
Yeah, I mean, it is an incredible book. Do you want me to tell the story of the book, or
I think it's a fascinating book by Ernest Hemingway that I read ages ago, and I had forgotten about this book, about this self-reflection. Yeah, so please, I mean, it's not where we intended to go, but I implore you to tell the story. Yes.
Yeah. So the story is there's an old man who's a fisherman. There's a young boy, and basically the old man goes out, he keeps going further and further out, wants to catch one last big fish, wants to do something in his life that's really noble, heroic, that, maybe the whole world thinks that he can't do it, that he's too old. But the truth is that he's learned tricks, that he's learned shortcuts, that he's learned from metaphor, and that, he's willing to face the biggest fish, the biggest problem, the biggest obstacle, and to just fight to the very end. And, so he catches that very big fish all by himself after everybody else has kind of given up on him. Then he comes back and the sharks eat it. It's strapped to the side of the boat and the sharks eat it. And he comes back and you can look at it and think, well, the sharks ate the whole fish, so what did he really win? But the idea is that you don't do things for the other people. You don't do things for the symbols of it. You do them for yourself. You fight the battles for yourself that are worthy of your life. So he fought and he won, and it's just a beautiful story that he did it because it was there, because he wanted to have this battle, and because he was sort of proving to the world, to himself, that he was worthy of one of the most incredible battles that anybody's ever fought. So that's the the thing there that you come away with, that we all have these battles, and that our battles are just as big as the biggest battles in Greek myths. That we're out there fighting, and what really matters is that we believe that we've done the best we can, that we've fought as hard as we can, that we've used every inch, every bit of energy, every bit of wisdom that we have to overcome some obstacle.
It reminds me of the COVID-19 pandemic, which undeniably impacted so many aspects of the world and businesses, but especially the publishing industries, from the supply chain disruptions to changes in consumer behavior. What lessons, when you think about that book by Ernest Hemingway, has Skyhorse Publishing learned from the challenges and how they are informing your future strategies?
Yeah, so I think that, what happened during the pandemic that really mattered most for me was the incredible censorship that kind of took over the whole world, and the level of propaganda, so that it became so difficult for people to get the truth. But there are a lot of messages there. There's a lot of wisdom there that you can take out of that period. Because on the one hand, it's this period where, real ideas, real debate was totally shut down. But at the same time, so many people's minds were open during that period. And that's a fascinating thing, that when you censor people, when you use propaganda to kind of shut down ideas, when you try to, it's the same in politics, when you try to keep people off the ballot, when you try to, vilify people or lie as far as sort of like what they think or what they would actually do as a candidate or as president. Often what happens is people go the other way. People have this kind of sense of when they're being lied to, or when there's propaganda, or when the other side of the argument is being kept from them. And what you see is that people then change. So we saw this incredible outburst of freedom during this incredible period of censorship. So I think people are more concerned with freedom, more concerned with, being convinced of something, than before the pandemic. So all of these draconian 1984 type methods to shut down real speech, to shut down book publishing, to control everybody, all of those things backfired. And, that's the kind of thing that you see from the old man in the sea, that people really want to be free. People really want to fight their own battles. They don't deep down want to be told what to do.
I just love tonight's show because as someone who reads, I'm going to really shock Tony that the old man's name was Santiago, and the giant fish that he sought to catch, and he did, was a giant marlin. So, and I had not thought, and that book was written, I think around the 1950, 1952, and it's just a classic. I'm gonna go back and read The Old Man in the Sea. I'm gonna go back and read that again. I've gotta read that again because the lessons are just tremendous, because the person that read that book ages ago will not be the same person reading that book today. But look, man, I cannot thank you enough for joining us. How do we find out more about Skyhorse Publishing?
Yeah, so you can go to skyhorsepublishing.com, or you can follow me on Instagram at Tony Lyons is Uncertain.
Tony, the key is you had a father, man, that you looked up to, you respected, you honored. He's still with us in his 90s. And man, I got to tell you something. That is our gift. We grew up with parents, man. That is, the breakdown of the family has been massive on our overall society.